think Riga.
Not every city has its own philosopher. Riga, unlike Copenhagen or Königsberg, is among those cities that do not have its own philosopher. In fact, relations between philosophy and Riga are unfinished. It's unfinished business. It's not even clear that these relations have ever been established. Here is a place where about 250 years ago there was a possibility to establish relations between Riga and philosophy. That was Philosophengang 250 years ago. It was here where at least two philosophers were walking, Johann Georg Hamann and Johann Gottfried Herder. Hamann, as you may know, was considered to be the brightest head of Europe in his time, at least by Goethe. Well, as for himself, he launched one of the most interesting and harshest attacks on his schoolmate, Immanuel Kant, and on enlightenment at large, and the reason itself. That's the most interesting attack on the reason ever conceived in Europe. And it was mainly conceived here, in these parts. Well, as for Riga, Hamann thought that it's the most disgusting place to which he would never return and would never even live, if not for his friends. In 1766, Johann Gottfried Herder, whose monument is behind me, was preaching in Dome Cathedral because he was an attractive young pastor. In his years in Riga, he conceived an idea, highly influential idea, of Volksgeist. The idea that each individual people has its own spirit and genius. Due to this idea, thanks to it, were born around the world all sorts of nationalisms, and as a result of that, all sorts of nation states. So in a way, Johann Gottfried Herder conceived an idea that formed and still forms one of the most important elements of modern world and its political landscape. And this idea, this formative idea, was conceived in Riga. Stop. Let me draw your attention to this building, which hosted the publishing house established by Johann Christian Hartnoch, another fellow Freemason in Riga, thanks to whose efforts a large part of German Enlightenment entered the world, and particularly Russian Empire, because the first edition of many works of Immanuel Kant were published by Hartnoch, works by Hamann and Herder, whom I already mentioned, also were published by Hartnoch. Paldies, paldies, paldies. The second half of 18th century was not the only time when philosophy's wings touched this city. We might say that in early 20th century, Riga was also touched by philosophy, or I would even claim maybe it touched philosophy itself. In 1909, in this house was born Isaiah Berlin, later considered the wisest man in Great Britain. And what is more importantly, to a large extent, author single-handedly of the idea of liberal democracy. The idea that people with different values will have to find some way of living together. And this idea of people with different views living peacefully together was born in Riga. And to my mind, to a large extent, due to his Latvian nanny of Isaiah Berlin, who definitely introduced him to various cultures and languages which he could hear on the streets of Riga. Without elaborating this argument, I would simply claim that Latvian nanny is the mother of the idea of liberal democracy, and she represents a manner in which Riga not only participates in the life of philosophy, but has given birth to one of the most powerful ideas in the modern world.
Meet Riga. meetriga.com